Well, the world is just full of all kinds of news, including the fact that despite what some candidates say, the U.S. economy has added a whopping 303,000 jobs last month. And apparently that is outpacing the expectations of some. And we'll see if this helps the Biden campaign or other campaigns as well. But that is something that was reported that it looks like there has been a job growth and it is outstripping the expectations that folks had. And that was for the month of March. So we'll see what April looks like and all along those lines. But definitely job growth and job situations are part of the news and part of the political landscape as well. So we'll see what takes place in that part of the conversation. And Israeli military has fired two officers as the probe blames the world's central kitchen deaths on a mistaken, it looks like a mistaken identity of some sort, and all along those lines. But definitely looks like two uh, folks that were officers in the military there have been fired because of that part of the war efforts that are going on in that part of the world and all along those lines. So they did have a reaction and all in that space. But definitely that is something that's going on as that war continues. And definitely we'll be having some conversation about that as well. And UK lawmakers are admitting passing colleagues' numbers to stranger met on a dating app. So it looks like there may be a honey trap sex scandal going on in that part of the world. So the MP, William Bragg, will keep his job as a Tory whip, and U.S. police are investigating spear phishing sexting scam as lawmakers admits to sharing his colleagues' phone numbers. So definitely it looks like the UK minister has been confirmed as the 12th target in the Westminster honey trap scandal. And I'm sure that Rick Rosner and others will have something to say about that as well. And it looks like the Israeli cabinet has approved reopening the northern Gaza border crossing for the first time since October 7th, according to officials in that part of the world. So we're seeing that as well. And there is rescue teams over there in Taiwan, as apparently a steel ball damper protected Taipei 101 from the Taiwan earthquake. And definitely they're saying that, unfortunately, Sasha may be interested in, as I know he is a major investor in NVIDIA, but they're saying that Apple and NVIDIA may see supply chain disruptions from the Taiwan earthquake. So the chip sector averted disaster from the Taiwan quake, but they are saying that it could impact some of the things going on in that particular trade in that particular part of the world. So it'll be interesting to see what Sasha has to say about that, because I know he's a big time investor in NVIDIA. As a matter of fact, he calls Aruba his NVIDIA vacation and all along those lines. But he might have some thoughts about some of these things that we're bringing up and all along that space. And 20 members of the Russian airfield personnel were killed or injured in a drone attack, according to what Kyiv's saying. So it looks like Russia has also downed dozens of drones as Kremlin warns NATO over Ukraine. So it looks like 6 Russian planes have been destroyed by drones, according to what is being reported out of that part of the world and all along those lines. And Israel is bracing for Tehran's response after the deadly Damascus attack. So definitely looks like Israel is cutting off GPS and cancels leave for soldiers fearing an Iran attack. But the Iran's Revolutionary Guard head vows payback for apparent Israeli strike that killed top generals. So that is something else going on. And Trump is in the news with Netanyahu. Trump is urging Netanyahu to get it over with and questions Israel's approach to the war in Gaza. So definitely looks like his Israeli criticism breaks with the GOP and is sowing certain uncertainty within the GOP party. So Trump says Israel needs to finish what they started and said war with Hamas is taking, quote unquote, a long time. So definitely Biden, on the other hand, is urging Israel's Netanyahu for Gaza ceasefire after the world's central kitchen killing. So the UN body is also demanding Israel to be held accountable for possible war crimes. So that's something else that we're seeing in the world as well. So definitely Israel admits a series of grave mistakes in that killing of the aid workers in that area. And speaking of genocides that go on, actually there was one that was 30 years ago, and that was in Rwanda. So definitely Rwanda genocide 30 years on. omitting women's memories encourages incomplete understanding of violence, according to some of the reports that I was seeing about that. And Rwanda's older generations fear a return of ethnic tensions, but youth apparently in that particular country are feeling more united. So, new mass graves in Rwanda reveal cracks in the reconciliation efforts 30 years after that horrible genocide, and all along those lines. So definitely, there's a number of things that are going on the global world, including of definitely the wild man of Argentina apparently bending to China reality. So Malay, who's over there in Argentina, is racing to ease inflation and retain his voter support. So definitely, that's something else that's going on in Latin America. So apparently, they're unraveling Argentina's economic maze and raising prices to stop inflation in that part of the world. And by the way, if you're wondering, as NATO marks its 75th anniversary as foreign ministers meet in Brussels, the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken says Ukraine will be a NATO member. So that is something that a lot of folks that are supporting Ukraine will be glad to hear about, and all along those lines. And we were talking about AI recently, and they were saying that apparently Israel reportedly used a database for their Gaza kill list, and some people are calling that AI assisted genocide. So definitely there are a number of things going on, including even in Denmark, where a scandal blights Denmark's buildup of its armed forces as it eyes possible threats from Russia. So definitely Denmark is concerned about Russia as well. And Denmark fired their chief of defense and runs into some more naval issues as well. So I know that even Sasha has talked about some of the Scandinavian countries that might be at risk if there should be continued Russian aggressions past Ukraine and all along those lines. So it'll be definitely interesting to see what folks' reactions are to a number of these news items that I brought up. And I'll also bring up one about the stuff going on weather-wise. So apparently a New Hampshire power or outage was reported on today. That would be Friday, April 5th. And that was because there was a deadly nor'easter that cut off power to hundreds of thousands across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, because apparently in the early part of April, there was a snowstorm. So 400,000 in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are without power because of that spring winter storm that blasted to the northeast. So yes, sometimes people are wondering if there are changes in weather, and definitely that might be an example of changes in weather where they're having that kind of cold weather at a time of year that they might not be expecting it, and all along those lines. And President Biden on today will tour the collapsed Key Bridge in Baltimore. So he is to visit the site of the Baltimore Bridge collapse, as they are saying that the Baltimore shipping channel will partially reopen by the end of April. So by the end of this month, it should be reopening. And by the way, it looks like there's a lot of people that are getting their Airbnb bookings because they are trying to find out a way to see the total solar eclipse that is about to take place as well. So it looks like there are some parts of the world where it's visible and everything, and other parts where it's not. So definitely it looks like folks are heading to those places where they can see the total eclipse, which I believe is coming on Monday, if I remember correctly, and all in that space. So definitely, as folks are looking for it, and some people are even getting their glasses so they can see that total eclipse and all in that kind of way. And speaking of stuff going on, but not eclipses, as Florida bans, and apparently they've banned legal abortions, folks are wondering where the folks in Florida will go if they want to get an abortion, because they'll probably go to a state, because that was even part of the conversation with Dobbs, where people might leave one state to go to another state where it is actually an acceptable procedure, and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see whether that goes on in these states that have definitely put in more restrictive rules and all in that kind of space. So we're getting ready to bring in our other folks, see what they've got to say about a number of stories, including some that they've got on their mind and some that they might have heard me talking about, and all along those lines. But right now, I see I've got Isaiah with me, so it's always good to have the voice of the youth as well. And of course, I've got Sasha Starr with me, and of course, I've got Rick Rosner, and of course, we've also got Jatovi as well. So Isaiah, just really quickly, how are you doing? Glad to see that you're with us and all in that space. And what kind of things have you been observing? One thing we were talking about yesterday on World Politics, and actually Jatopia sent me a note about it earlier today, was this notion that I know David Walker has been very big on no labels, but apparently no labels is about to be no more, at least this time for this particular season of elections. Not saying that they're going to close their party, but they are not going to be fielding a candidate in 2024 and all along those lines. And they announced that yesterday. So I was just wondering your take on life in general and how you're doing.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me here today. So I actually don't know about the no labels. Not familiar with what's going on with that. But some things I've been looking at is, for example, the World Health Organization on May 27th is getting together to sign a pandemic plan, which basically it signs up all 196 countries that are part of the UN to a plan that is managed by the WHO to create for the next pandemic. And if I don't know if you all know, but the leader, the director general of the WHO is Tedros, and Tedros used to be part of the Ethiopian Communist Party. He was like the health director for them. So now we might have an international organization that's going to be moving or changing some of our policies for the next pandemic, and then the leader of that organization also belongs to a communist party, and China had put them voted for them to be the leader of the WHO like around 3-4 years ago or more.
Just really quickly on that, this year, Henrik and everything, but as a young person and all along those lines, how concerned are you about there being another pandemic? I know there was talk about the bird flu, even though they say it's not going to impact people as much as this last pandemic, but you are part of the young society and all along those lines, and definitely you have gone through this first pandemic, just like those of us that are in our middle ages have as well. But I was just wondering your thoughts about this notion of you having to face another pandemic, maybe sooner versus later. But I just wondering how much of that is a concern among you and your peers.
Absolutely. I do believe. I mean, there's definitely will be another pandemic, as there's always pandemics throughout the years. It's not really a black swan event, but in terms like personally for me, I found ways to boost my own immune system. For example, using colloidal minerals such as gold, silver. I use this thing. It's called. It has 80 different minerals in it. And anytime I get sick, I use it. And it makes my body a lot stronger. I believe like a lot of the reasons that we get sick nowadays, as well, is because of the nutrition we have, our food, the lack of minerals that is in our soil. A lot of the pollutants that are now in our food as well. They destroy our immune system. uh, but I wouldn't know how to solve that. I mean, you don't have many people talking about like minerals and different things to help your body combat diseases. It's not known in the medical industry much, so I believe still the next pandemic we'll see a lot of similar things such as lockdowns and having to wait for vaccine.
Well,
And
Rick,
don't
you had
so
something you were going to say?
do not take colloidal silver. It will permanently dye your entire body blue gray, and then you will never ever be able to get a girlfriend. I've seen people who've taken colloidal silver. It makes you look just hideous and weird, act like not too much different from the color of my bathrobe. Just don't take that stuff. There are
Yeah, I
plenty
mean,
of
I've heard that if you take a lot of it, it can do that. But I know like in smaller amounts. I mean, it's used in the medical industry, colloidal silver for burns and a lot of other stuff. But it's definitely about the dosage of what you take.
You
it's
got
the
definitely.
equivalent of getting your face tattooed. It leaves you permanently looking weird. Um, so I like David Walker, but I'm glad the no labels went away, because it would just have um, made it more likely that Trump gets elected. But if you look at the betting odds on on the site that I go to look at the odds, uh, 2 months ago, Trump had double the chance of getting elected as Biden. Yesterday, the odds went to even 50% for each, which is a good thing because, we've had 26 consecutive months of unemployment under 4% for the first time in 60 years. Under Trump, we had more people without jobs than at any other time in U.S. history before or since.
Hey, just
And
along those same lines and everything, and kind of going in that same direction. You just heard me say that there is a whole heap of jobs that were created. I think I said something like 303,000 or something along those lines. But that doesn't seem to play well with our electoral folks and everything. So I just wanted your take, and maybe Jacoby, you want to jump in on that as well, because like I said, those are some significant job growth, but I don't know that it ever resonates with people that are on the political front and are trying to figure out which candidate they are going to vote for and everything. Because like I said, that is a sizable amount of job growth when there are, like I said, 303,000 jobs that were created literally just last month in March and everything.
The were you better off question of 4 years ago is where this plays into, and people always have nostalgia. But don't remember that 4 years ago, we were throwing people into the back of freezer trucks because there were so many dead bodies, because the pandemic was running wild, and it was the number one killer of Americans, and it was one of the worst killers in the world. We had a president that actually, at that time, that wanted to legitimately use the U.S. military to shoot protesters, people who were protesting against him. He used the U.S. military to clear out an area in front of the White House so he could do a photo op with a Bible being held upside down. We also had, by every economic measure, outside of inflation, the economy right now is better and stronger. Even if you include inflation by the arc that it was going, even in his the year before even COVID hit, the arc was, steadily going to where it would be today. There is also greedflation or whatever they're calling it. Basically, the companies are utilizing inflation to increase their profits. But all of these things are happening, and people are living off of the nostalgia of, 4 years ago, we were better. Even the countries that are outside of the U.S. are afraid of Trump coming back in. Why? Not because he's this powerful dude. No, because he's an isolationist, and and the other countries know that they will be left out to dry for other countries to, like Poland will be attacked by Russia, because they know they're going to be left out to dry because Trump is an isolationist. He doesn't care about the other countries. He uses that. He's basically a transactional person. If you kiss his behind, then he'll do something for you. But if you don't kiss his behind, he's not going to do anything for you. And not every leader is going to do that. Hence the reason why all the leaders at the World Conference, one of the World Conferences, all the leaders were laughing at him, literally on camera, laughing at him. But the reason people aren't seeing it is because, one, the nostalgia, the media push behind it, and the messaging from the Republican Party. They use that really well, more so than anybody else.
Definitely agree with you on that. And everything.
1 million more Americans died under Trump than in 4 years under any previous president. Only a third of that was due to population growth. Trump was Trump is America's worst businessman. From 1985 through 2015, according to records that have been revealed, Trump lost more money than any other American. He's bad at stuff.
Not to mention, more soldiers died up under Trump, but we're not gonna remember that. We're gonna always remember, look at how bad the Afghanistan withdrawal was. Well, you're forgetting about the context that Trump pulled out a ton of soldiers, left us only with a bare minimum there, and then had already agreed with the Taliban about pulling everybody out at that particular date. So basically, right before Trump leaves, when he knew he had to leave, he hamstrung the actual next president and put them in a bad position. But we're not, again, the nostalgia, and we forget about all these contextual things because the messaging is there.
Yeah, speaking of context and contextual situations, I'd love to hear Sasha's thoughts
Wait,
about this. But
to give
go ahead, Rick.
So Trump reduced troop numbers in Afghanistan by December of his last year in office to 2,500 people. You can't hold a country with 2,500 troops. He had to be talked out of pulling all of them out by Christmas of his and so yeah, he set the U.S. up to fail there.
And not only that, not to mention Nick's favorite topic. He added more to the national debt than actually Biden did. And then on top of that, he had a pandemic. And the only reason if we talk about the economy, we always tend to ignore the pandemic year or what was going on right before there. Because in 2019, there was a spike in immigration as well. He went to the courts to try and shut down the government. And he actually tried to use what everybody yells about right now. Oh, well, you can use executive orders and shut the wall. No, you can't, because that got blocked in the courts. The only reason that the numbers went down in 2020 was due to the pandemic, and nobody was allowed to move through anywhere. And that was every country. So therefore, if you look at the numbers again on immigration, the spike was happening in 2019. And we were actually even talking about in 2019, the immigration spike. There were news articles all over about how the immigration spiked. But then Trump goes on TV talking about, oh, there's a caravan of migrants. Everybody remembers how he ran off and ranted and raved about a caravan of migrants coming and all this. And that was the way he was trying to use it to convince people that the executive order was okay, but it wasn't. And then you got in 2019, going into 2020, that was when the stock market began to crash. That was when we began to lose a lot of jobs, again, because of COVID and so on and so forth. We can't ignore the COVID year, but for some odd reason, with the nostalgia and the messaging, we tend to look back way past all the bad stuff was going on and create this idea that, oh, well, everything was great. It wasn't. It was really bad.
I'm speaking of messaging really quickly, and this is where I was going with Sasha and all along those lines and everything. But
current situation, Jatovi, and let's not look at the past. And here's the current situation: we're $34 trillion in debt, and we're adding 1 trillion every 100 days. Now that, of course, stops unemployment because we just keep throwing more in the debt wagon and more in the inflation wagon. Now let's see Biden's solution. Budget buster, 1.7 trillion debt in 2025, squandering money on all sorts of worthless projects. So, when the choir of you lefty lunatics are all, oh, Trump's so bad, the problem is he's going against a guy who's also really bad, and that's Joe Biden. And we see it every day in our practice.
Nick, hold on a second.
Practice where your government officials keep coming after my clients over worthless things only so they can justify their jobs. I see these worthless government employees creating more and more rules like the Department of Labor only so they can justify their worthless jobs. So voting against Biden is an option because he's a horrible president. Just get over it.
But just really quickly, and this is my question for this is my question for Sasha and everything, because that's where I was going, even with the global conversation on world politics and world edition and everything. But Trump also made some comments, and I know that you're not the biggest Trump fan, as many people on this panel aren't and everything, but he was being very critical of Israel and the Israeli prime minister. As you heard me say, he's urging Netanyahu to get it over with, and questions Israel's approach to the war in Gaza. And he says that Israel needs to finish what they started. And he said that the war, quote unquote, is taking a long time. So what is your thoughts as both of the leaders, the past leader of the United States as well as the current leader, are trying to tell the Israeli prime minister what to do, particularly after that World Central Kitchen killing and everything?
I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because it's really hard to judge Donald Trump's actions in the war, because basically he didn't have any wars like Joe Biden does when he was in office. So because of that, he's really difficult to judge when there's conflict, because he eliminated the conflict, unlike Joe Biden, who created some really horrible things, from pulling out of Afghanistan to allowing Russia to invade Ukraine. I don't think Russia would invade Ukraine if Trump was in office. And then, of course, the Israeli conflict. So it's really hard to judge Donald Trump because there were no conflicts. Joe Biden, on the other hand, creates a lot of conflicts, so it doesn't surprise me that he has a lot of problems.
Nick, may I ask you, is it your position that if, what's his name, Trump would be a president on October 7th last year, then Hamas wouldn't attack Israel? Is that what you think?
Well, it remains to be seen. The problem is Sasha, is that people were scared of Donald Trump. It's just like Ronald Reagan when he got elected. Immediately, Carter couldn't get the hostages out of Iran. The minute Reagan got in, because Reagan was a Looney Tune fruit, they didn't understand. They released the hostages. So it wouldn't surprise me if Trump gets elected, all these conflicts get settled immediately. Where Joe Biden's like a lefty lunatic pushover. Look at how he runs the country. Look at how he runs the budget. Look at how he runs the government. I mean, like I say, I have to fight Joe Biden's craziness every day. You guys don't have to do it. So you don't run into his lefty lunatics out of Washington. But every day, it's like a big battle fighting these government employees who are way overpaid to do really incredibly stupid things. Now, we should also move to FIDE, by the way. I did look at FIDE. This is the Federation International Chess. And Sasha made an allegation that they're infiltrated by the Russian mafia. If you go look at the International Chess Federation, they are infiltrated by Russia. Even the financial services firm claiming to be US based is all Russian. If you look at all their sponsors, they're either Russians or they're allies from India. And remember, India and Russia have a great relationship. Hence, Pod TV got banned from covering it. And you might be right, Sasha, because we're against the Russian war in Ukraine, and they see us, we're against it, and they don't want us there. But this is the politicization of a stupid thing called chess. It also shows how Russia is infiltrating our international organizations. And this is just chess, so it's kind of benign. How many other organizations has Russia infiltrated that are not being disclosed by the major media? Yeah, Rick.
Nick,
Russia loves fiddling with the world. And Russia didn't invade under Trump because Putin likes Trump. Putin wants Trump to be president again because Trump likes Putin and will let Putin do whatever he wants.
Wait.
Stop, Rick. You said Putin will do. Look,
just to point out,
it was Obama when they invaded the Crimea.
It's true, but
hold on.
You can argue that Putin gets what he wants when a Democrat's in office.
Let's make this really easy. It is a fallacy to say that there were. It's a fallacy to say that there was nothing going on under Trump, because there were at least 130 wars or 130 armed conflicts from during Trump's presidency. So we cannot say that nothing was going on. On top of that, with Russia and Ukraine, the reason Russia was not invading Ukraine is because Ukraine was being blackmailed by the US president. So therefore, why did Russia need to jump into a war when they were getting what they wanted for free? Because the US president was actually blackmailing Ukraine at the time. So and then on top of that, the Afghanistan war was still going on under Trump. The only time it ended was at the end, with everybody complaining about the withdrawal of the the troops from Afghanistan. So we cannot continue. Again, this is the fallacy that we live under. That 4 years ago.
Jacoby, hold on a second. Just really quickly, I have a couple of incidents I want to mention, and then I want y'all to tell me when these incidents took place. But a member of the Saudi Air Force, identified as Mohammed Saeed Al-Sham Rani, opened fire on a classroom in the Naval Air Force Base in Pensacola, Florida, United States. 4 people, including the assailant, were killed and 8 others were injured in the attack. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula claimed responsibility for the incident. Al-Sham Rani posted criticism of U.S. wars and quoted Osama bin Laden on social media hours before the attack. That's item 1. An assailant driving a Home Depot rental truck entered a bike path in an attempt to run over civilians on the West Side Highway in Lower Manhattan, New York City, United States. Following the initial attack, the assailant exited the vehicle and was shot by a police officer after displaying imitation firearms. At least 8 people, including 2 citizens from the United States, 5 Argentinian tourists, and 1 assailant were injured in the attack. And once again, an Islamic group claimed responsibility for that. And then last but not least, a suicide bomber detonated explosives, a pipe bomb at Port Authority bus terminal between 7th and 8th Avenue in Manhattan, New York City, New York. In addition to the assailant, 3 civilians were injured in the blast. And once again, it was an Islamic extremist. That
7 months until the election.
And all of those incidents took place. The last one was 2017. The first 2 were 2017, 2019. That would be under Trump's watch.
Okay. All right, but like in terms of like chaos and stochastic terrorism and overheated rhetoric, it's 7 months till the election. My wife kind of freaked out yesterday on like she says, we can't watch the news anymore. But like we're gonna see like unprecedented like people saying crazy crap, people doing crazy crap, perhaps hacking attacks on U.S. infrastructure. But just it's all where it's designed at all. It's designed to demoralize you and kind of get you to not participate in democracy. So everybody just hold fast and don't freak out.
Speaking of not freaking out, Rick, I've got to teach you because I know that you and your friends on Naked at Night love talking about these kind of stories and everything. But how much is there a danger? And I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't watching a special on the Playboy empire and everything. Yesterday was a documentary on them, and a lot of those women had gone through abusive situations before they got involved with that magazine and all along those lines. But these honey trap sex scandals, because it's not.
So I've got a whole thing on that. So the deal is we live in an unprecedented time for pornography. We have probably more pornography gets generated per year than in all the previous years combined. Everybody should stay like honey traps are where Russia, for instance, and often like sends people in like Maria Butina to cozy up to politicians and who couldn't get laid to save their lives and act like they're studs and compromise them. But the deal is like nobody should be like doing extracurricular like screwing around. We've got so much porn. Just stay home, wait till your family goes to bed and jerk off. Do not get involved with pretty ladies who might be Russian spies.
I'll tell you one very interesting story about honey traps in Russia.
Yes.
It's happened actually to the at one time girlfriend to great former world champion Michael Tal. Her name was Larisa Sobolevskaya. I'm not sure if she's still alive. Probably she is. She was really, really very pretty lady. But she was working for KGB. And one trap what they created was for French ambassador. We're talking about somewhere in 60s. So they wanted to compromise French ambassador. So the story was this. So she was introduced to him. And she said that her husband is head of geology expedition in Siberia. So she's, it was implied that she's somewhat lonely. And one thing after another, she invited him to her apartment. And right in the middle of the night, her husband, who, of course, he was not geologist of any kind. He was not even her husband. He was just a KGB operative. He came with 10 other KGB people. So they compromised completely this French ambassador. He was lucky to stay out of jail and was immediately deported back to France. That's sometimes how things are working with the geology people or so on. Nick, further to interesting thing about FIDE. I was watching yesterday the picture of the hall where they are playing because it was part of a broadcast. First of all, you must understand that justification to hold it in Toronto was that it's a major chess tournament to popularize chess in North America and make it available to everybody. Let's look at some information. Number one, ticket prices, VIP experience. Okay, VIP one day on weekday, $199. Remember, one day. On a weekend, it's $219, and all rounds, $2,400. You can imagine any school children who want to learn more about chess. Can you imagine them paying $2,400? I don't think so. However, let's move to general admission. General admission one day on a weekday $64 and on a weekend $75, and general admission all around $750. Now, remember, very interesting thing. When you're buying general admission, you are allowed to watch the games only for 2 hours. Then you can walk to fun zone, you can do something else. But then another portion of people coming to replace those people who leave after 2 hours, they're also staying for 2 hours, and then yet another portion coming for another 2 hours. So this is a complete disaster. The whole was just a sec. Mark, okay, say what you want to say.
No, I was going to ask you a question based on what you just said and everything, and it comes down to that notion of cost and the cost of events and everything. Because Jacoby and me can tell you that right now there is a major film festival that is going on here in Durham, North Carolina, and it has some very high prices as well that a lot of people probably can't afford and everything, because Full Frame is going on, and I want to say the starting prices, correct me if I'm wrong, Jacoby, but they're close to that price that you're talking about. So it comes down to that whole notion of the market value and what the market dictates and everything. So there are people that are willing to pay that price, then you're going to get those kind of prices. Because I think Full Frame is going for I think the starting prices is like $60 to $100. Am I correct, Jacoby? That's what I remember looking at, and all along those lines. But it's not exactly cheap. To your point about the chess tournament, so I am wondering about the market size. And you also mentioned that it was covered on television, and I was wondering, because we had talked about this before, were you watching it on ESPN or was it on the Canadian network that you saw the game at? Because we were trying to figure out if ESPN had rights to show the games and if that's what you were watching it on, because we did mention that ESPN was involved in this chess tournament as well, and I'm not sure whether that's what you saw it on, because I wasn't watching it with you.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, good. First of all, certain festivals, like movie festivals, yeah, you can have somewhat higher prices, but you have people. So some people may not be able to buy your tickets, but most of the people will, because even $60 or $100, it's something. But and it doesn't mean that you sell only for people rights for stay there for half an hour, and then you have to leave, and another people come for half an hour or so. Now, when I started to talk about it, I saw the broadcast yesterday. It's not on ESPN, forget it. It's not on major television networks, forget it. It was on specialty, their own FIDE channels. They have video commentators. The place was empty. They were not even be able to stay close to the tables to watch the games. No, they were playing on the first floor, and there was a kind of a gallery on the second floor, and people could watch the game from that gallery. That gallery was empty. So this is a typical KGB event when no people, no press, nobody is allowed to be there. They want to enjoy it to themselves. They don't care about money. They got more than enough money from Russian oligarch to stage this event, to pay everybody or so. It's a typical money laundering machine. That's all what we have here in my city of Toronto, here in Canada.
Well, I can tell you this, Sasha. When I looked at their website, they only have like 3 or 4 major sponsors. One of them is clearly a Russian corporation. The other one claims to be a U.S. financial company. I've been in financial services for 40 years now. I never heard of them. So I went and I did some research. They're all owned by Russians. What they have to do with the United States is nothing. They just say U.S. based. Well, almost anybody can hire an attorney to open up a corporation for the U.S. It's called Financial Freedom or something like that, and say, well, we're a U.S. based company, and they're all owned by Russians. It was hilarious. And then there was one other company. It was an Indian corporation, and we know that Modi is in bed with Putin. So the Indians are and then that was kind of like it. I was going, Well, they really did. They really do not have international sponsors. I did send complaints to every FIDI member of the United States delegation. I sent complaints to every delegate in Canada, and we had one response from somebody in Canada that says
Yeah.
we don't know what's going on. And of course, the whole FIDI board that's supposedly managing this crazy event, and only got that one response that you saw, Sasha.
Yeah.
They're giving you this. Here's our response. You know. And by the way, your video yesterday did go to all the chess sites, to hundreds of thousands
Excellent.
of people. Okay.
By the
So
way, Nick, what's interesting, I think you can get much more robust response when you will send a letter that you are evaluating damages to POT TV, and you will get back to them very soon. You will get a lot of response because
well, I mean, but see, here's the other practical problem. Even suing an organization like that, you got to find where the defendant resides. And FIDI, we have no clue where they reside.
In Switzerland.
But what we could do is sue all the people that are the members of FIDI from the U.S. delegation.
Absolutely, and you can you have a list of all the Canadian officials, because this is a mockery. Because Canada provided the grounds for the KGB-based operation, and it has nothing to do with promotion of chess in Canada. There is no promotion of chess with the prices of $2,400 for pass, and what this is obscene. So let's see. Okay, I don't care. Okay, I'll buy tickets. Here's $200. Give me my ticket. But you can watch the game only for 2 hours. The game is 6-7 hours long. You can stay for 2 hours, and then you have to leave. Although the place is empty, but you still have to leave. It's
I know, and it also gets me that if they infiltrated organizations like chess, and we know that they infiltrated the sports organizations because of the social. How many other organizations, international organizations, does Russia infiltrate and even today continue to influence? Is the question. And
well, I mean, this is a question I was going to ask earlier and everything, because the other part of what was going on that I said I was going to mention, and I don't know what Sasha's thoughts about this are, but there is a number of things that were going on, including a disaster that took place in the world that was impacting the trade, thinking about Taiwan, of one of your major stocks, which is NVIDIA. So I just wondered if you are concerned at all about this disruption of the supply chain, since I know that you are a major NVIDIA investor and everything. And that's one of the stories that I mentioned I was going to get to and everything. So I just wondered, getting off of the chats for a second, if this was a concern of yours about this notion of this this kind of supply chain disruption impacting NVIDIA and all in that space, because that's something I was going to also mention to you in the news and see your reaction to it, because I know you're very big on NVIDIA.
I'm very big, but I'm not a major investor in NVIDIA. I have a few hundred shares, that's about it. However, yesterday, all market plunged for various reasons. One of them remarks that interest rates may not go down this year and so on and on. But that doesn't matter. NVIDIA went down just as well as all market. Today, there is a recovery, at least by now. It can all change in the afternoon, but right now, market is recovering, and so is NVIDIA. It's done pretty well. It's about almost 1.5%. And I didn't notice any disconnect between NVIDIA and all other markets. So the shortage of Taiwan chips and products, so whatever, I think probably it is an issue, but right now it's not.
Fair enough, and everything. I was wondering, just over here in that space as well with technology, but what's your thoughts around this disruption of supply chains?
I mean, with everything being digital now in terms of the gaming world, I mean, it may harm some developers and stuff like that. In the gaming world, chips might get hit. It all depends on how long the disruption may be. I think what's going on in Baltimore with the bridge, that's going to be a bigger disruption than the earthquake.
Yeah, I would agree with Jacoby. I think the earthquake is kind of over with, and it's not going to be a major disruption. So, business will be as usual. I think the biggest disruption will be the election coming up. And I also agree with Rick. What the vast amount of misinformation we're going to see over the next 6 to 8 months. I'll see you guys in Spain. Habla español, no más, y tú. Gone, baby, gone. You know, because
We're looking at Spain
ridiculous.
also.
What?
We are also. My wife is also looking at Spain, and we're copycatting you. Whatever you find
Right.
out, we take.
Well, you know, see, okay, I'll tell you, they have this what they call digital nomad visa. In other words, if all your income comes from weirdo things like mine does, which is interest and dividends, and you know, and I don't really work for a living, so to speak, you can apply for that and get what they call a digital nomad, which means you can stay there as long as you like. There's also visas if you want to spend $500,000 for a home, then you can also get a visa. I think they call it the golden visa, which is one of the lowest, by the way, 500,000. Portugal used to have it, and they eliminated it. I'm going to talk to an immigration attorney this afternoon, to see what the story is. The flights are cheap. It's cheaper to fly to Barcelona or Madrid than it is to go to Los Angeles. I mean, you know.
So's the food and rent, and like
Oh, yeah.
Italy too.
Okay, now here's the other thing: seaside, beautiful, on the beach visa. You know, on the beach, huge apartment, like $1,000 a month. I mean, I'm not kidding. And if
Well,
you
no,
shop,
hold on a second. Hold on a
you
second.
get
Nick, just,
$350
Nick, I
a
hear what
month.
you're saying, but just really quickly, we've
can't do
got
that
a
in Carolina.
youngsters that's in part of our panel, and he's been a part of our panel now for a while. So glad to have Isaiah, and I know sometimes his, relative Christina comes with him as well, but she's not here today. But I was just wondering, are you one of those folks that, like these gentlemen, that is thinking about moving to another part of the world? I know that part of your family roots is from Latin America, but I'm just wondering, are you thinking that you're going to bail out of the U.S. depending on who wins, either Biden or Trump, or are you content with being here and pursuing your entrepreneurial dreams here in the United States?
I used to want to move out of the country. Like a few years ago, I was thinking of going to Panama. They had you just had to spend $5,000 to put in a bank account, and they'll give you a citizenship, or a
Are you
residency.
serious? That's it, Isaiah? $5,000 and you can be a citizen of Panama?
Yeah, but they
I'm
increased
telling you
it.
guys right now, the United States needs to change their immigration policy. $10,000, come on in, baby. We'll have plenty of money. Or they can go to Panama for $5,000. I mean, you know, this coming to America for free has got to stop.
But what stops you from taking
That's
the
not a real
$5,000?
thing, though.
What stops you from taking the $5,000 deal, Isaiah? Hold on a second. I want to know what stops
I
you.
mean, I'm still very worried about the U.S. economy. I don't think that
It's going to collapse. What are
it's
you
that
worried about?
healthy. Absolutely. And the reason is because, like, let's say the U.S. economy has been strong since the pandemic, but most of it's been from printing out a lot of money. And then inflation is still high. And then even though, like, for a lot of people, or like for people who are not low income, inflation doesn't matter as much. But since 80% of the income is housing, food, insurance, and all those things, it's really impacting low income people a lot. So every 3% that we get is bad. And also, I want to talk about, like, from the rally of the October lows that we had last year, and how much the economy has grown from them. But the EPS for all the shares has only gone up 7% since the rallies of the October lows. So EPS is like the earnings and the sales that a company has gotten and how much is grown. So that's only grown around 7%. But while all these companies, their multiples has gone up like 3x, 5x, and so on. And even like cyclicals to financials, from miners to transports, saw expansions of 30 to 70% of their multiples. So right now the market is very overbought because they've expanded a lot, like their market share and their market price, but not their earnings. So that all has to do with the risk appetite that the country is seeing right now. So ever since the pandemic, and since we gave helicopter money, a lot of people took on more risk and put a lot of money into the stock market, and that's what you keep seeing now. Because when the Fed did tighten, at the same time the Treasury was still loosening money, so there was never really liquidity tightened. So the stock market hasn't crashed at the moment.
Well, it's not going to be the stock market crash. Here's what you're going to see when Biden gets reelected. You're going to see an Argentina-style economy where inflation is just rampant. Now we can mark Sasha safe. He's over in Canada. Isaiah, are maybe looking to go to Panama or somebody else. Everybody here is not safe. I'll also tell you something, Rick. If you want to buy a home, because ultimately we're going to buy a place there. We're going to rent to start with. You can buy a home, and the interest rates are a whopping 2.5%. Go on, Rick.
Well, our interest rates won't stay high forever.
Sure.
I talked to a couple people yesterday who were in the business of telling us what to do with our investments, and they say the Fed cuts in February. Maybe they only cut twice instead of the three. I'm not February. I'm sorry, September they cut. And when they cut, then people start putting more money into stocks, because when you can't make 5% in your money market safely, then you'll start looking at stocks again. So at least temporarily, the stock market will get goosed.
Right.
I would like
Just
to
point
remind
out,
you, there are estimated $6 trillion in money market funds and bonds and so on. And Rick Wright is right, when the interest rates will not provide you with 5% profit, you will have no other way as to go into stocks. There will be simply no other alternative investments or anything exists. All the $6 trillion or major part of the $6 trillion will go into stocks. And what's going to happen with the stock once major part of $6 trillion move in? You know what's going to happen.
Hey,
Okay,
Sasha,
just to point out real quick,
hold on a second. Sasha,
um,
Rick, I've got to tease both of y'all and everything, because there's a story that involves, because I just saw this story, it involves both Canada and the United States. And Rick, you're going to love this, but apparently if you are bold enough and you want to try to go Ocean's 11 or one of those kind of situations and everything, and you are willing to possibly get caught and spend a whole lot of time in jail, then you can go out there and rob a lot of people of money and everything. And some people would say that that's already what Trump is doing, but apparently there was a incident that just took place in LA that involves a Quebec
Yes.
multinational Garda World that was hit by a $30 million heist. So they just walked
They
off
robbed
with
$30
LA's
million.
largest gas heist ever.
Yeah, they robbed it over the weekend. A total heist. Last week I was saying you can't do heists anymore because, cameras every place, and what are you going to do with money? They proved me wrong. They busted into this vault, $30 million. Over the weekend, didn't discover it till Monday morning. Those guys are long gone.
Yeah.
Just,
One more thing, you're going to be disappointed in Spain, Rick. There are no homeless people. No homeless. Okay.
What were you going to say, Jacoby?
Income tax
I was
rate.
just going to point
Also,
out that
I got another.
Homeless. If you want homeless, you want poverty, you want a horrible economy, vote for Joe Biden and stay in America.
Well,
You
so
want some
also,
justice.
if you get drunk and stumble into the street, you don't die, because everybody in Spain and Italy, all those Euro countries, they drive little teeny cars. Like you don't get hit by a Ford F-150.
Because we're going to one day we got to get to Ukraine. But what were you going to say, Jacoby? And then I also had a comment about one of the other big money heists that might have gone on as well, because some people are trying to figure out how that can be handled. But what were you going to say, Jacoby?
We always jump to the inflation as the reason why the U.S. economy is going to tank, but right now it's actually one of the lower economies across the globe. We always tend to forget that every other country is out there and also has inflation, such as Canada, such as Spain, such as everywhere else. But we tend to, hey, we're isolationists. It's only happening here. Nowhere else is it happening. That's incorrect. There is poverty in Spain. Sure, there's poverty in the U.S. as well, but we cannot use that as an excuse to say, well, there's everywhere else is just better and our economy is going to crash because, inflation is there or poverty is there, which is untrue. Poverty is everywhere. Hence the reason why we have to try and do things to fight against poverty, not only in the U.S., but also across the globe. And the same thing about the inflation itself, because inflation, we were sitting at the lowest inflation amongst all the other countries out there, yet we're still arguing that our inflation is too high, but we forget that other countries. Same thing with gas rates. How we complain about our gas rates being too high at $3. Well, other countries have that the extra gas tax and all these other things, and their gas rates are at like $7 and $8. So there's a higher rate on some things. There's also the taxes where, Nick, you complain we shouldn't pay for schools and we shouldn't pay for this. Well, the taxes that are taken in not only Canada and other countries are paying for not only universal health care, but also universal education. So all these things we forget that we have to take into account. And instead of blindly complaining about things, having an educated discussion around things, because again, inflation becomes a moot point if you really discuss inflation about the US and the economy being tanked because only the US is having inflation problems, when it's every other country that's having inflation problems and a higher inflation rate at certain countries as well.
Hey, just really quickly, because we only got about a minute or two to go and everything, but I was going to say that apparently Letitia James, the Attorney General, has objected to Trump's bond deal, and there are some people that question the Rick, you'll love this, it's a California company that is whether they can handle Trump's $170 million bond, and maybe we'll get to that on Monday with the Economics Monday and other shows. But there are some folks that are wondering about the company
weaponization of the judicial department by the Democratic Party. That should be one of our topics. Okay.
I would like to ask the company.
You like it, Toby? We'll do it on Media Monday. The weaponization of the judicial department by the Democratic Party.
It's not just the Democrats.
What's always funny is that it's only weaponized because it's Trump, as if Trump is the only billionaire, and people say, well, they're coming after him because he's the only billionaire out there. Really, he's the only president. He's the only one that's broken the rules, broken the law.
The lesson is, if you've been criming and your dad was criming before you for decades, then don't run for president, because you're going to get scrutinized and all your dirty deals are going to get, eventually looked at.
Well, the last thing I'll say is just, Nick, we've got to get rid of it because we got to get to Ukraine.
Hold on, the first time.
Go ahead, wrap up.
The first time Trump was investigated by the FBI was 1972 for racial discrimination in renting. It's like he's been doing hinky stuff forever. He got away with it because he wasn't running for president and getting $4 billion worth of free media coverage because he says jackass stuff.
Just really quickly, and Nick, if you'll hit that button to get us out of here and everything. I'm not sure we're going to have shows on Monday because, there is a solar eclipse, so the solar eclipse might impact all of us and all along those lines, since you got those conspiracy theories that are always wondering what the solar eclipse does to us as a people and everything. So we'll see what the solar eclipse and how it impacts us, since I think that's coming up on Monday as well, if I remember my date correctly. But it'll be interesting to see if the solar eclipse doesn't impact us in some kind of way also. But on that note, we're going to get out of here. It's just me having a little bit of fun and everything, but we're getting ready to get out of here. And we got Russia, Ukraine, and China coming our way as well.